I mean, come on. These are the hujurat of the mothers of the believers. I mean, it doesn't matter how, there's a little bit of common sense. You don't do that. Unless you're worried about your throne. And when you're worried about your throne, people go, they don't care. To protect the kursi, everything becomes jaiz, right? That's just the way people are. And may Allah protect us from ever sitting in such a kursi, because wallahi, that is the biggest fitna known to man. Power is the biggest fitna known to man. So, this is a theory that makes a lot of sense. Now, it is said that some of the scholars objected to this. And it is clearly mentioned in our books, Musannaf Abdul Razzaq and other books of Tariq and Athar of the Tabi'un, that a number of senior scholars of Medina, the senior most amongst them was Sa'id ibn Zayd. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, excuse me. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib. That Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, he objected. And he said that this should not be done. Now, some scholars of our times, in particular the theologically minded, like many of the Salafi scholars, for example, they say he objected for theological reasons. That he didn't want the qabr to be included in the masjid. But in fact, this is not true. This is not true. If you go back to the actual athar and see what he has to say, this is not why he's objecting. Why was he objecting? He was objecting because he wanted the people to see the simplicity of the houses of the Prophet ﷺ. How rough and coarse they were. And he wanted them to gain a lesson. So this shows us even within 90 years, civilization had come to Medina. And we know this. Within 90 years, people are living fine now. Within 90 years, 2-story structures are being built. Within 90 years, embroidery, fabric, clothes, money's coming in now. It's a different, you've conquered the Roman civilization, half of it, you've conquered the Persians. Of course, money's going to come, civilization is going to come. So Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib is saying, I want the people to see how the Prophet ﷺ lived. Don't destroy these houses. Let them see as they used to see. It will bring our heart softness. So he objected for reasons of tarbiyah, for reasons of raqa'iq, of having soft heart. Of course, politicians don't care about Islamic rules, as is always the case. And so, he did not care, and he ordered that all of the hujurat be demolished. Except for Aisha, because that's where the qabr is. And the governor of Medina at the time was none other than someone who would become the Khalifa in another 15 years. And that is Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, the famous Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. So at this stage, Umar Ibn Abdul Aziz, who is of course a relative, because he's from the Umayyad clan, right? His mother is a descendant of Umar, right? From his mother's side, he's a descendant of Umar. From his father's side, he's the Umawi. He's a royal Umawi. So Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was at this time the young governor of Medina. And at this stage of his life, by the way, he was not practicing that much. When we say practicing, by the way, when we say practicing, I mean, subhanAllah, that's a different thing. Of course, everybody at the time is praying, fasting, whatnot, but there's like a love of Islam, extra love. At this young phase of his life, he didn't have it. This came later on, before he became the Khalifa, and he became very zahid and abid and whatnot. But at this stage, he's just the regular Umayyad prince. He's just living the life of the regular princes. He's not concerned about theology and whatnot. He wants to curry favor, like every prince, like every governor. You want to please the ruler. So whatever he says, khalas, we'll do it. So Umar ibn Abdul Aziz himself takes part in basically helping out and demolishing all of the houses of the Prophet ﷺ. Really sad tragedy, but this is when it happens. That it happens that all of the houses of the Prophet ﷺ are demolished, other than, of course, the house of Aisha. And then they decide what is to be done now with the house of Aisha. So here's now two opinions that are done. According to one opinion, the original house is left. The original house is left, and around the house of Aisha, another structure is built. And according to the second opinion, which I probably don't agree with, I think the first opinion makes more sense. The second opinion says they did demolish the walls of Aisha's house, and they built another structure in its place, which is more permanent. In either case, the essence is the same. Some structure is built. Whether it was built on the original structure or right around the original structure, this is the controversy. Okay? Most likely, Allah Allah knows best, and it's difficult to say. I mean, honestly, there's no way to do this, but I would hope he had preserved the original structure. But even if he did not, the point is that they wanted to build something more permanent. And they built it made out of thick blocks of asphalt, the same that the Kaaba is built with. Big black box, chunks, cubes. They built it and there was no door. They didn't want any door. So they covered it up. And they built a solid structure. And if we can go back to the slide for just 1 minute, and then I'll come back to me. Hold on a sec. Where did we? Yeah. Here we go. This is the wall of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. Clear? This is that black wall. It's in your slide is blue over here. This is that black wall that was done in the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. Now, stay on the slide. Don't come back to me. It is said when they were building the wall, and this kind of seems to suggest that they destroyed the original wall, one of the workers jumped up and screamed or was aghast. And Umar ibn Abdul Aziz came forward, and he also was about to scream, because lo and behold, there were 2 feet protruding from that place. And they were scared these might be, now this is 90 years on, and the feet are completely fresh. They might be the feet of the Prophet ﷺ. Then they called the scholars of the time, and one of the famous scholars of Medina, Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab, so the grandson of Umar ibn al-Khattab, who was obviously a second cousin of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz from his mother's side, right? He said, "Don't worry, O governor, this is the feet of our grandfather, Umar." So this is the wall. This is this wall. They must have doing this wall. Now, this narration might seem to suggest that they actually destroyed the original wall. Might seem to suggest that. And yeah, maybe they did. Might seem to suggest they destroyed the original wall, and then as they're destroying that wall, they see feet, and they're worried, what is this? And they find out, no, these are the feet of Umar, not the feet of the Prophet or Abu Bakr. And so they obviously bury it up, and then they bury that wall. They bury the feet, and then they build a wall. Now, stay on the slide. So now what Umar ibn Abdul Aziz decided to do was to build a pentagonal structure. It's not fully a pentagon, because you see over here, some weird thing over here, that this was a small door to go in if need be, to go into this area. This was a small door over here. And so they built a pentagonal structure. So this pentagonal structure was built in the reign of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. Okay? So not only did they build this structure, which was the actual house of Aisha, they also built this pentagonal structure. And for at least 400 years, this was what visitors to the Masjid of the Prophet would see. A pentagonal structure. Why was it a pentagon? Now you can get off the slide. Why was it a pentagon? Scholars say, some of the early scholars mentioned why. For a number of reasons. Number one, they didn't want somebody to pray to the qabr. When they're praying salah, so it's as if there's a qabr over there, so you have like a pentagon. So it's as if you can't really pray to the qabr. And number two, they said that they didn't want some ignorant people to think there was another Kaaba in Medina. Because these are new Muslims, people are converting. So there's a Kaaba structure, cube, built of the same material, same shape, same color, right? Smaller, obviously. So they didn't want people to think that, so they covered it up. And so this pentagonal structure remained for many centuries. Now, before we move on to the architectural thing, books of history mention, and I'm afraid we're not going to finish at 8:30 because I'm not going to come back to this, and I know everybody's very interested, so there's no problems there, but we're going to go at least for 15 minutes, if not more. Books of history mention that there were a number of attempts to smuggle the body of the Prophet ﷺ outside of the qabr. Some books mention 3, some mention 4, some mention 5 such attempts. And I'll mention 2 or 3 of these and then give you my thoughts on this whole narrative or motif. Of the earliest attempts, at least 2, it is said, were attempted by the Fatimid Khalifa al-Hakim bi Amrillah. And the Fatimid Khalifa al-Hakim bi Amrillah was one of the more, shall we say, colorful figures in Islamic history.